Hi there, welcome back to the channel. So, it's almost Halloween. It's the time of year where people are watching horror movies and, doing Halloween stuff. So, I wanted to do a little show and tell and show you something that I got, I guess it was like 2003 when I lived in Los Angeles, that I think is really exciting and fun and really appropriate for the holiday. And that is one of the editing boards from the motion picture The Exorcist by William Friedkin, as cut by Bud Smith. Check it out. This is the Exorcist editing board. 13 reels, ironically or coincidentally. And this is the Iraq sequence from the film. For whatever reason, Bud didn't cut the entire picture. He just cut that sequence. And this is the editing board from it. And there's 13 reels, which I think is great. You have, it says The Exorcist up here. On the back, you've got Ross Levy's name, Bud Smith. This says production number 1, room 106. This would have probably been an editing suite at the Warner Brothers Studios, I'm assuming, since the film was a Warner Brothers film. You've got the number of reels, you've got selected, and you can see where they've checked it, with the little red pen. Edited, it says here there'll be checks, and then here it says part, projection, sync, director, director first view. So this would have been Friedkin, looking at it for the first time and then making a mark there. And then here again it says first view, really neat. Then you have corrections, okayed. I would assume that would be Friedkin saying, "Oh, this I like the sequence. It's okay. Let's print it." Mixed and completed. So, and then you have notes. So I think it's just an amazing, document to an amazing film that was a cultural zeitgeist of the '70s. And had a massive effect on, blockbuster culture, the way they released films, the way the public reacted to The Exorcist. I remember like Saturday Night Live sketches, Mad Magazine. It was massive, and to survive the film, to go see it and be able to make it all the way through the film was the thing. It was like blowing people's minds, scaring the hell out of people, making people like throw up and urinate themselves. I mean, like, go back and look. If you look it up, it was a pretty interesting phenomenon, just the way that film affected people. And Bud Smith is, I consider him to be one of the top 5 to 10 editors of all time because of his work. He directed, he edited the Robert Downey Sr. film Putney Swope. Which I still find that to be a very progressive, like sort of influential film that was way ahead of its time. When I saw Louis C.K.'s series that he did a few years ago, I thought that it owed a lot to Putney Swope, and I really feel like that film is still ahead of its time, in tone and in sort of the way it was cut. The editing in particular really stands out as being very modern and new and exciting. And the editing in The Exorcist is unbelievable. The sequence is a masterpiece, masterclass in editing. And I was lucky enough to get to meet Bud because of my wonderful neighbor Mike in LA. When I moved in, we ended up hitting it off because we were both from the Houston area. I went to high school there. He was from Conroe, which is a small town outside of Houston. And so we had the whole Texas thing in common, but he was just a wonderful person, always trying to help people. He helped my family multiple times in very, major ways. So I have an intense connection to him. I actually have lost contact with him over the past few years. I haven't been able to find him lately. As time goes on, we lose people, and I really want to track him down and find him again because he's just a great guy, and I just want to check in on him. But because of my friendship with him, I got to meet Bud. He was friends with Bud, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come over and meet Bud at his editing suite over in Burbank?" And I was like, "That'd be amazing." So we go over there. I got to meet Bud Smith and his wife. His wife is actually a pretty well-known dialogue editor, and they're both, amazing people. And Bud is a super tough guy. He's from Oklahoma, and he was just a really tough, LA dude. He had to survive out there, and there's something about that town. If you aren't tough, you ain't gonna make it very long. And Bud was a tough guy. And like I said, he cut Putney Swope with Robert Downey Sr. He had a poster on the wall in his office of Putney Swope, which was really cool. And I got to talk to him about the making of that picture, which is amazing. He told me a lot about The Exorcist and what he went through in the making of that. And we talked about Cruising, the movie he did with Al Pacino, because in Cruising, the music in it had Darby Crash and the Germs involved. And there's a song from the soundtrack, and he got to meet Darby. And I found that utterly fascinating. And he was excited that I knew who Darby was, because he kind of had assumed that he wasn't that well known. And so it's an amazing guy. It was an amazing moment to get to meet him. And one of the films that he cut that really meant a lot to me, and that he actually produced, he and Friedkin did this project together, was the film Live and Die in L.A. And I actually saw that in 1985 at a Dollar Theater in Houston, Texas with my girlfriend Kay. And I used to drag her to all kinds of stuff like this, and I absolutely loved that movie. Thought it was amazing. I thought it was a masterpiece. I went to see it like 2 or 3 times in a theater, and it was getting really bad reviews. And I'm very glad to know that it's been reconsidered, in the modern era as a great film. And I found out that it won a Critics Award, or it was on a list of like all-time great movies about LA, which it absolutely is. And it captures Los Angeles in a time period in the 80s that, it's an amazing document to that time period, because LA, unfortunately, they tear things down there a lot. I don't know if they still do it, but they would just like tear things down, like these amazing documents to Hollywood, old buildings and stuff, and they just mow them down, start over. It's just kind of the way the city is. It's sort of like, it's like a set, and they just uproot it every once in a while and start over. It's weird like that. But Bud was an amazing, or is an amazing talent. And that film, I highly recommend you look it up, Live and Die in LA, if you haven't seen it, because the editing is fantastic. He actually does several really interesting things that remind me of the work he did in Putney Swope and Live and Die in LA. And there's a sequence with Willem Dafoe where where he's counterfeiting money that is just absolutely astounding. It's just a complete masterclass in how to edit film. And knowing that in Bud Smith's day, he was cutting on moviolas and Steenbecks, cutting on 35mm film, and it's a whole different ball game from doing it on a computer, which is so much easier and so much simpler, and is nowhere near as difficult as what guys like this had to do. Cutting a movie like this, so much stress, so much pressure, it's unbelievable. And I think he was a genius. I think he's a genius film editor. And I think this is a really lucky thing to have. I'm really happy about it. What happened is, after I met him, Mike said, hey, I got a bunch of stuff out of Bud's office. He was dumping some stuff, and he asked me if I wanted it, and I knew that you might be interested, so I got it for you. And I was like, what is it? And we walk over to his truck, and in the bed of his truck was this Exorcist sign, and he also gave me several 35mm film reels that were also used in the editing. They're actually in a storage space. I couldn't dig them up today, but those were also a couple of the little souvenirs from The Exorcist, from William Friedkin and Bud Smith. But anyway, I just thought it was a neat thing to show people, because it's a great film. And this time of year, it just seems like the right time of year to mention it. I posted it once back when I was still on Facebook. I posted it on there, and it seemed to excite people. People seemed to really, find it interesting and fascinating. And I got a lot of likes and everything. So I thought it would be neat to bring it on here, because I've never really talked about it or anything, and I always kind of forget that I have it. And I happened to just walk by the bookshelf the other day and see it sitting back there. And I was like, I should make a video about this, with it being almost Halloween. And it reminds me of how great of a director Friedkin is, and what a great editor Bud is. And one other thing I wanted to just mention as far as editing goes, there's a car chase sequence in Live and Die in LA that's incredible. French Connection, which is another film that Bud cut for Friedkin, is considered to have the greatest car chase in the history of cinema in it. But I think he betters it in the Live and Die in LA sequence. He had an idea, I think it was in 1963, driving down a freeway in Chicago, that he would one day shoot a sequence where somebody, because on that day, he somehow gets flipped around on the highway and is going the wrong way into oncoming traffic. At that moment, solidified it in his head that one day he would make a film where he had a sequence where a character's driving up against traffic like that on a freeway. And he does it on the 405. It's either the 110 or the 405, or maybe it's a combination of freeways in LA, because you end up on several of them if you're going from one end of town to the other. But it's an astounding sequence. And to find out that Billy Peterson drove his car, and knowing that the day that I talked to Bud about the editing work that he had done, one of his proudest moments was the fact that he and Friedkin had discovered Willem Dafoe, who turns out an incredible performance in that movie, and it's one of his first real kind of showcases as an actor. So it's a special film, great editor, great guy, great filmmaker, and I just think it's amazing to have something like this in my collection. Even though I don't know if it would ever be worth anything, I don't really care. I just think it's an important thing to admire and discuss. So, happy Halloween next time.